But for me, it's definitely a story about taking the time to listen to what our children are actually saying to us and not jumping to a conclusion and trying to steer them in a different direction. We're surprised, pleasantly surprised by the princess that she wants to be.
It's a positive thing in terms of listening to the voice of the child, isn't it? And I think taking inspiration from children, that is quite central to your role as an author.
A lot of the time we're told we can't simply because of the colour of our skin. They're not looking at whether we are talented in that field, whether we have a drive for something or a passion for something. They're simply looking at the exterior and saying, actually, that's not possible for you. It's really important to see yourself in these professions.
And that's how this beautiful book came to life, to be in the bookshops and in libraries. Amazing. In this episode of My Words, My Book, we have Stephanie Taylor. Stephanie Taylor is a mum of 2 adult children. She lives with her husband Michael and fur baby Neko. She loves reading, writing, music and dance. In a bookshop is where you will find Stephanie in the children's picture book section. Stephanie has worked in primary education for over 25 years and is passionate about diverse books for all children. Stephanie's book, I'm Going to Be a Princess, illustrated by Jade Orlando, reflects Stephanie's passion on inclusion. So Stephanie, why did you become an author?
I actually became an author by accident. It wasn't a deliberate plan of mine. During COVID, I had just been jotting stories down. I've always done it my whole life. And my daughter just said to me, Mummy, if you don't do something with this particular story, which ended up being I'm Going to Be a Princess, she said, I'll never forgive you. So I just sent it out to some open submissions and was surprised that a couple of agents got back to me. So it wasn't a deliberate act. It was kind of, okay, I'm stuck at home because of COVID. Let's see if we can do something with this. Yeah.
So even though you are an author, you still have a full-time job?
Yeah. So I work in a primary school with year 5 children. And it's always been a shame to me that there aren't that many books with black characters in them. And Maya in the story is my goddaughter. And she's always sort of said to me, oh, there's nothing that I really want to read. And that to me is always a challenge. So, I love to find books that children of colour, whether they're black children, Asian children, whatever, like to read. So I guess that was in the back of my mind as well. But yeah, I still work in teaching, still find it challenging to find books, but yeah.
So Stephanie, you work within a school.
Yeah.
You have had 25 years of working within a school. What is so special about working in a school for you, especially a primary school?
Seeing the development, we get children. Year 5 is a funny year group because they're still quite young in lots of ways. And they come into year 5 and they still think that they're going to get the extra play that they get in the younger year groups. They still think that you're going to do most things for them. But in year 5, you're preparing them for year 6 and secondary school. So year 5 is wonderful to see how the children progress from these quite dependent little beings into real independent children ready for year 6. So an example is they'll come into year 5, sit at a table and go, Miss, I don't have a pencil. And I will look at them and think, so that's quite an easy problem for you to solve. What do you think you can do? But by the end of the year, they're coming into class, they're grabbing what they need, they're sitting down and they're ready to learn. Most children, not all children as we know, but most children. And so it's lovely to see their development, and that's the satisfaction that I get from working with children of that particular age group. I find the younger ones a little scary, but year 5 and 6 is my bag, definitely. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I think in terms of, have you shared any of your books with children? I know that you've got the book that we're going to talk about shortly.
Yeah.
But are there any books that you may have freestyled with children to say, oh, what do you think about this? Because you've got actually the children in front of you to share your ideas in terms of instant research for your book.
Yeah, I mean, that happens quite a lot. And that is really, Year 5 is a brilliant place for story ideas because they are doing a lot of writing in Year 6. We are teaching them how to form stories, how to plan a story, how to look at characters, character development. So that works both ways. And sometimes children will say things and I kind of log it away in the back of my head and I think, okay, that's something that I could possibly use later on. And sometimes it comes to fruition, sometimes it doesn't. But the children love to talk to me about what I do because they know about the book. They know that I'm writing other stories. They're very impatient for the next one to come out, but who knows when that will be. So yeah, it works both ways. It's lovely to develop stories with children, but it also enables me to develop possible future projects as well.
Exactly. And ideas and sharing them with
they
the
give so much
children.
without even knowing it half the
Absolutely.
time. So there's always a little pad on my desk where I might jot down something that somebody said.
Or particular characteristic of a child or colleagues.
Definitely.
Amazing.
There are some real characters, which unfortunately I can't disclose, but there are some real characters in school that you just think, okay, there's definitely a story behind this child.
One of the things that I thought was really positive, how you shared your journey in terms of writing your book. Did you find that there were any challenges going door knocking, as it were, to the different publishers?
Yeah, I mean, when I speak to other authors, I think I've had quite an easy, unexpectedly easy ride of it because, like I say, it was during COVID, so everything was happening by post or online, and I sent the book out. I think probably to about 6 agents and a couple of publishers, and got a no almost straight away from the publishers. But then there were 3 agents that sort of came back to me and said, oh, we like this, we see some potential here. So then I was in a very strange position that I've now come to realise of picking somebody that I felt sat right with me, suited me. So I ended up with James Catchpole, and we just seemed to have an ease of talking to each other. We kind of related on lots of different levels, and he had a similar vision for the book that I did. He kind of came back in great detail about what he thought, and it sat well with me. So I don't think that I had some of the challenges that other authors seem to have, but I don't know whether that was because, like I say, it was during COVID.
No, I just think you're talented, Stephanie. I just think that, just say I'm talented. This is the reason why. And I think that's a really important point to share, is that there are some first-time authors like myself. When I first started, I didn't have an agent initially. And sometimes a publishing house may pick the book up first, or an agent. And I always say there's no straight road in terms of becoming an author. There are many different, turning points, and every author's story is different. This is why one of the reasons for having this podcast is sharing the author's story, because it is unique to you as an author, Amazing. So in terms of books, what was your favourite book as a child?
So my favourite book is called The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstone. I've brought it with me.
Oh wow, let's have a look.
Okay. And the reason that it's my favourite book is I think as a child, when you read this book, it just reads like quite a poetic, beautiful children's book. But when you get older, and I read this to my children, it's completely different. The message in it is completely different. I don't know if you know The Giving Tree very well.
We have had another author, Nikki Saunders, and this was her favourite book.
Oh, okay. I just absolutely love it. I love the simplicity of it. I love the fact that all the illustrations are in black and white as well. But for me, as a mother reading it to my child, the children just thought it was beautiful. They loved all the pictures. They thought it was quite sad at the end when the child comes back as an old man. But for me as a mother, I saw the tree as that mother figure. You know, nothing's ever too much. You want to give to your children to make sure that they've got the best. And yeah, I just think there are a myriad of moral stories that you could pull out of this book. I think it's really beautifully and cleverly written, and that's why it's still one of my favourite books to pick up now. And I have shared this book with the children at school as well, because I just think it's yeah, there are a million things that you could do with this book as a teacher, as well as just sitting and enjoying it.
Yeah, the simplicity, but the message behind it, and the conversation that it can spark, you know.
Definitely.
And it's timeless, as you said. You read it as a child, and then reading it to your own children, and now the children that you work with.
Yeah,
as
because I
well.
didn't realise that this book was written when I was a tiny thing. I'm probably about a year old. Yeah, and like you say, it's timeless, and I absolutely love it. I've given it to so many people. This is probably about my 5th or 6th copy of the book, because I do like to give it to people as well. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, which I think leads us on to your wonderful book, I Am Going to Be a Princess, a story about inspirational Black women and girls, and illustrated by the super Jade Orlando.
Yeah, she's incredible.
She's good. She's actually illustrated a book, Year of Black Joy, that I contributed to. So her illustrations just jump out at you.
They really do.
And you can see there Maya, the character, she takes centre stage, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And you just want to share a summary of this book?
Yeah. Can I just quickly
Yeah,
say,
of
though,
course
that
you
when Jade was given the words, my words for this book, she hadn't actually seen a picture of Maya, because Maya is a real person. She's my goddaughter, and the book came about through a conversation that I'd had with her, but she had never seen Maya, and I was blown away because she looks exactly like her. I do have a picture of Maya with me, unfortunately not here right now, but it is incredible, the likeness, that I had to contact Nosy Crow and said, did you send a picture of Maya to Jade? Because it's like she'd crawled inside my head and drew Maya. But yes, yeah. So sorry, your question was.
No, don't say sorry. I mean, that's a beautiful story to share in terms of, I think, you know, how illustrators, I always say the illustrators bring our work as authors alive.
Yeah, they do. She definitely did that. Definitely did that.
Yeah, amazing. So in terms breaking down, what is the summary, the heartbeat of this book?
So it's the relationship between Maya and her mum, and I think it's a relationship that lots of parents have with their children, boys and girls. I know, you know, this is based on a girl, but I think it's true for both relationships, that we sometimes have ideas about what we want our children to be, and it's about listening, because the real conversation that happened was between Maya and I. And she had made this statement to me, and I immediately was like, absolutely no way. You know, you could be a princess while you're little, but you can't grow up and be a princess. And actually, I should have listened to what she was saying, because she had great ambition. So throughout the story, this is mum sort of saying to her, that's lovely, because parents want to encourage their children. But what about this? Or what about considering this option? And it's about the relationship between Maya and her mum. It's a beautiful relationship, but mum is definitely trying to move Maya into a direction that she sees probably as more acceptable as a life choice, as a career choice. And then being surprised when she takes the time to listen to what Maya's actually saying to her, being very surprised and very proud and very overwhelmed by her daughter. Yeah.
And I quite like that. And I think for me then, hearing you share the story about how the story came to life was quite interesting. And I think sometimes as adults, we put our own ideas in terms of what a child can do and can't do. But in Maya's head, I am going to be a princess.
She's very determined. Yes. And obviously where pleasantly surprised by the princess that she wants to be. But for me, it's definitely a story about taking the time to listen to what our children are actually saying to us and not jump into a conclusion and trying to steer them in a different direction. So yeah, I hope that's one of the messages that the book gives anyway.
And I think it's a positive thing in terms of listening to the voice of the child, isn't it? And I think where you shared earlier, working within the school environment and taking inspiration from children, that is quite central to your role as an author.
Definitely, definitely. If you can't stop and listen, whether it's as a parent, as a teacher, as an author, then I think you're going to find yourself very stuck and very stagnant quite quickly. So yeah, that.
And that's how this beautiful book came to life, to be in the bookshops and in libraries. Amazing. So would you say you had a favourite page in I'm Going to Be a Prince?
This is one of my favourite pages in the book, and that's because I used to want to be a dancer and danced for many years, and then came across Misty Copeland's story because as a young person in the UK in the 70s and 80s, there weren't many black dancers at all, and we weren't represented. And I had the most awful ballet teacher who let it be known that she didn't think that I was suitable for that world. And that's a very similar story to Misty's. So she was always going to be a part of this book. There were other people that I had intentions for the book, and we had to negotiate, as you do. But Misty was always going to be a part of it because I loved the message that she gives about being determined, about being strong, about self-belief, and never giving up on a dream. And so that's why this is one of my favourite pages in the book. Yeah.
And I like that page because it reminded me of something that I wrote in my non-fiction book, My Skin, Your Skin. And there's a centre page in there where the heading is, you can be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
And then we have different careers illustrated on that page. And one of them in there is a ballerina, and it's a black ballerina. And the story that I share why that's in there, because when I worked directly with children many, many years ago, because I'm very old children, we either went to visit a ballet performance or the performance came to the school. I cannot remember, it was that long ago, but one of the things we did as an activity after that, getting the children to draw, make a mark or make a story about the ballet performance. And being the dramatic person that I am, I started, probably not as fabulous as yourself as a ballet dancer, I started to do pretend to do some ballet movements. Yeah. And one child said to me, Laura, you cannot be a ballet dancer because you're black. Yeah. So that, for me, that page is a significant reminder, and every page in that book, My Skin, Your Skin, is either a personal or professional reflection, and the importance of positive images for every single child.
Exactly. And I think that's what Misty Copeland represented, not just because of her skin colour. That was the main thing that attracted her to me initially. But then when I read her story about them talking about her height and her weight and her build and all of these things she can't change because that's her genetic makeup. But she still became hugely successful and still is hugely successful. So she's somebody that I admire greatly. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And it's a beautiful illustration that Jade has done there.
Yeah, I was
the
really
colouring is fabulous.
Yeah, I was really glad that they gave her matching ballet shoes because a lot of the time there's an issue around ballet tights, ballet shoes for women of colour. They just can't get them. So it was really important to me that Misty had skin coloured tights and ballet shoes as well. Yeah, yeah.
So if you was interviewing yourself, Stephanie, what question would you ask yourself about this book?
I think the trickiest thing for me for this book was cutting down those fabulous women. my list of women probably started at about 20. And then by the time I sent it off initially to those open submissions, there were about 8 women in there. But obviously, picture books, there's only a certain amount of room. So I think my question to myself would be, how did you do that? And I guess in the end, I had to try and pick women from a variety of different fields, because I think that you can be successful in any area, any area that you pick. You can strive to be the best. So we have a ballerina, we have a surgeon, we have a NASA scientist, and we have an athlete. And these are women that went through so much in their careers, broke boundaries, the glass ceiling, however you want to put it. They smashed through and made a name for themselves against all the odds. So that's why I ended up with the 3 women that I ended up with. And I also wanted children to realise that your mother, I know a lot of Caribbean women would want their children to be doctors or lawyers or things like that. But I also want your children to know that you can be a sportsman or sportswoman and be successful. You can be in the arts and be successful. But if you do want to go for a professional career, and when I say that, I mean like a doctor like we have, or a scientist, then that's fine too. And these women show that nothing's impossible if you really strive for your goals and don't let anybody put you off.
I think the main thing there is about children being contented and happy in terms of who they are.
Exactly.
And that is important. But I think you've probably got enough characters for a book too, in terms of
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to be a princess, because you could probably make, a series of books. That's a little note there to your publisher.
Yes, please say that again. Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, there were so many wonderful women, and yeah, like you say, this book probably could have been 3 times as long, and I still wouldn't have fitted them all in. But I just think that it's really important to see yourself in these professions, because as we were talking about ballet, a lot of the time we're told we can't simply because of the colour of our skin. They're not looking at whether we are talented in that field, whether we have a drive for something or a passion for something. They're simply looking at the exterior and saying, actually, that's not possible for you. Do something else. So, but yeah, this book could have been 3-4 times the length, but we know what picture books
Absolutely,
are like.
absolutely. And then you've got your own little mini version of the princess there, which I just think is just absolutely, it's amazing as a visual to have that. And I think you were sharing earlier when we were speaking that you use the miniature princess to bring to your author visit.
Yeah, and children absolutely love to hold on to her, and to touch her hair and to see her dress and to things like that. And I always say to the children, Maya is a real person. Unfortunately, I can't drag her around school visits with me, but I've brought the doll with me. I also have a little crown that I have, and I always ask the teachers to pick somebody that they know would really enjoy that, really feel that. Maybe that child that's shy maybe sits to one side a lot of the time. So I make a real fuss of them, and they love to sit and hold the doll and wear the crown.
So that confidence building for children is super important, isn't it? That's grand. So in terms of takeaways for children and learning points, what do you want children to really understand about I'm going to be a princess?
Just that anything's possible. Don't allow, and I don't use these words with children obviously because it's a bit much, but don't allow the outside noise to get into your head. If you want to do something, you really can.
But we can break that down, that outside noise.
We do. Well,
in
I talk
terms-
to them about being determined, and a lot of the time they'll give me examples, and it can be anything from them learning to ride a bike to, I don't know, tying shoelaces. For small children, these are quite big things. When everybody else around them is doing something and they can't, that determination, and I think that's where it starts. If they know that they can, ride a bike without stabilizers, they can do their own laces, they can get their coat done up that tricky zip, And I just think if we continue from when they're really small to encourage that determination, that resilience in them, and then that builds up with them as they get older, when you start to have different conversations with them, like about their careers. When I'm going to schools, I get the children to draw a picture about what they want to be when they grow up. And a lot of the time they don't know. There's like 3 or 4 different things. And I say, well, that's fine, because, you know, you're 7, you're 8. It's okay not to know which one of those you want to be. And I had a little boy that wanted to be a footballer, and then he wanted to be a rocket scientist. And I said to him, but why can't you be both? Because, you know, your football career is quite short, or it could be quite short. So if you're studying, you can go off and, you know, fulfill your science dreams, and you never know, you might be the next man on the moon. And it was just like the light in his face when I said that. It's like, oh, I don't have to choose. And why should they choose, especially at this age? So I really hope that that's what the children take away, is that anything is possible if they just hold on, if they just try one more time, if they just have a little bit of determination and resilience, then, you know, anything's possible.
That is a great point to finish on, Stephanie, for children to keep on going and to keep on going. And thank you for the great work, the 25 years that you've worked within a school with children. And I think you need to get your flowers for that, which I think is absolutely amazing. And you can read I'm Going to Be a Princess. Remember to use your local library, I always say. It's free if you do have a library near you. And thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. And keep reading. This podcast was woven in partnership with our friends at Tapestry, the childhood education platform. They have kindly devised the educational resources for each podcast interview. Tapestry helps you celebrate children's learning, improve communication with families, and streamline your admin with powerful booking, invoicing, and management tools, giving you more time for what matters, the children and you. Visit tapestry.info to find out more. This podcast series was recorded at the Quick Brown Fox Video Production Studios in Wandsworth Town, London, with top-notch equipment and a knowledgeable team who are always happy to help. Recording our podcast has been a breeze.